And this is an excerpt from a writer named Steve Newcomb. When Christopher Columbus first set foot on the white sands of Guanahani Island, he performed a ceremony to take possession of the land for the king and queen of Spain, acting under the international laws of Western Christendom. Although the story of Columbus' discovery was taken on mythological proportions in most of the Western world, few people are aware that his act of possession was based on a religious doctrine now known in history as the Doctrine of Discovery. Even fewer people realize that today, 5 centuries later, the United States government still uses this archaic Judeo-Christian doctrine to deny the rights of Native Americans and Indians, etc. Now, the origins of the Doctrine of Discovery, to understand the connection between Christendom's principle of discovery and the laws of the United States, we need to begin by examining a papal document issued 40 years before Columbus's historical voyage in 1492. Pope Nicholas V issued to King Alfonso V of Portugal the bull Romanus Pontifex, where you hear us often refer to as the Pontifex of 1492, declaring war against all non-Christians throughout the world and specifically sanctioning and promoting the conquest, colonization, and exploitation of non-Christian nations and their territories. This is the source of the entire world's false doctrine of racism. And it is the source of the wars in the entire world, in the modern world. It is the source of the conquest and the destruction of ancient scripts, ancient sciences, the cover-up of advanced ancient civilization, the cover-up of ancient technology, much of which is more advanced than the technology that's used today, all for the purpose of causing peonage and injury disguised under the word slavery against humanity itself, period. Unfortunately, the dark priesthood has also controlled the education of the people's offspring who they had conquered. One of the members of the Cabal, whose mission is to overthrow any form of government that acknowledges the allodial rights of any human, is Rockefeller, who set up the General Education Board in 1902 for the purpose of motivating the people to take a docile position in life and to negate and ignore the divine laws of nature and to take on a curriculum that would make them passive servants as opposed to being truly educated in life, in nature, and in the harmonies of how the earth works, and thus having a true knowledge of the economies of life, etc. And so by the people being groomed under the cabal of the dark knights, the people have very few reference points by which they can extricate themselves out from under the dark iron hand oppression of Rome via their Romanus Pontifex of 1492, and the next year Intercatera Divina of 1493. If we are sincere that we're going to bring some remedy for humanity, we must admit and study and understand and comprehend how we got in the position we are today. To ignore it, to ignore the facts, is both irresponsible, hypocritical, and evil. Do not confuse Christendom as an order with Christianity in the sense that people take it as religion. For the most part, in all of the major religions, the general masses never really get true religion. They get dogmata. Doesn't mean that they don't get some information that might be kind of uplifting and make you feel good for 2 minutes. But for the most part, cures nothing, fixes nothing, and pretty much costs them finance over and over again with empty promises that never fulfill. But it keeps them starry-eyed and keeping them gazing into the netherworld, waiting for mystery gods to come save them from the evils that the priesthood are actually putting on them that gave them the dogma in the first instance. This is one of the reasons why the priesthood get quite upset when you have, through the periods of time, seers or prophets that come and start exposing to the common people the Kabbalistic principles that have been preserved only for the elite, because what it does, it liberates the people from the mental servitude forced upon them by the priesthood, who always got gods to sell that always just happen to be broke all the time. But they always try to remind the people that the gods have bank account at J.P. Morgan or Chase and stuff like that. And even adults think that that's real, and they teach it to their children and setting up the next generation for this continued darkness, including the fact that some of these persons are the major stockholders in the arsenals of the world that are designed to poison the earth, murder humanity, cause suffering to women and children around the world, and then after murdering them and bringing suffering, want to offer them some prayers that always cost them a tithing. And the truth of it is, very few people want to admit that truth that I just said, and therefore they become complicit in this criminal activity that has been imposed upon the planet and upon humanity and upon the animals and upon all life forms, and poisoning the blood of the earth, which is the waters. However, we're at a point now where so many people are suffering, they're going to be forced by divine law to shed their dark priesthood, who they've faked as being loving, godly beings, and see them for just who they are and who they've always been. The very demons that they had people pointing into the nether darkness to try to find. Or it is the priesthood themselves who are the demon. And that's a hard thing for most people to handle. However, it is true. And again, the suffering will be upon humanity in this coming cycle, and it is present upon them right now as we speak and will increase. And they will decide for themselves whether or not they want these dark priests to continue to rule over them and to feed them broken, idol gods that always cost and produce nothing but poison the earth and kill humanity and make void and empty promises of salvation. Take these two words and consider them, and I won't give it a definition. I'll just give it to you and remind you to study. Salvation. Write that down. Salvation, and next to it, put salvage yard. And take it into consideration, to deep thought. Next word. Vibration. Next to it, ascension. Just for your consideration. I'm not going to discuss it. I'm not going to break it down. Just giving you something to think about. Also, want to remind everyone, as we said past week, that all corporate entities registered under United States Corporation Company, are party members to the Roman Curia. Roman Curia, ROMANCURIA. Now, as we talked last week, to remind everybody that Pope Francis ended the doctrine of discovery, Christian doctrine of discovery. Keep in mind that essentially removed any claim of the color of authority that has been operating on the planet for quite a few hundred years now, and particularly in North America under the United States Corporation Company. We all know, those who study law and history know, that from a point of jurisprudence, that the United States Corporation Company is a company and not a country. We know that. We also know that they've been operating on multi-levels under impostorship and a fraud, starting with pretending to be Americans, going to and fro the earth, devouring nations in our name, then poisoning and then genociding the nations, and then calling anyone who seeks to defend themselves a terrorist, then hiding behind God and country statements, etc. Understand, when the Pope Francis ended the Christian doctrine of discovery, their claim of superior authority, upon which they've been genociding people all around the world, where they've been shooting harmless people lacking any defense whatsoever on the streets, etc. They've been doing that because they knew that the magistrates are actually deputy knights operating under the pontifex. It may confuse some people, thinking that these people have derived their authority under the United States Constitution. If you ever thought that, unfortunately, it's not true. For they hate the Constitution or anything that represents the securing of the rights of humans or the people. This is why they operate under their secret Treaty of Verona to enforce the doctrine of discovery. But again, I'm going to say, keep in mind that as Pope Francis ended the Christian doctrine of discovery, they can no longer use the powers vested in the Holy See to commit their genocides around the planet and then pretend that they have some kind of delegated authority from God or from the American Constitution, which they've never honored. This is again why people should pay attention to, even under the jurisdiction of even the de facto United States operations. The Clearfield Doctrine dismisses their claim as government, knowing that their seats have been transferred to the IMF since 1933, and they're simply private deputy knights running around the world murdering people, pretending to have constitutional authority to hold those seats of office. But even while they're doing that, they've been robbing the people, even some of the very people who have been supporting them. And this is where now the middle class, so-called middle class Europeans operating in America, who have been spoiled under the white codes set up by Horace Greeley, are now finding the middle class being sacrificed now that the civilized world are starting to get rid of all of those bonds that were issued by the cabal. which makes them dead paper for any nation state on the planet that is not, put it this way, brain dead or not capable of understanding the instruments that they were tricked into buying in the name of some security, i.e., the U.S. T-bonds, which are absolute worthless paper. And so the nations of the earth, anyone who has those T-bonds in any of their treasuries, their nation state, if it hasn't already collapsed, will collapse. So it appears that the people need pain in order to start doing right or being fair and being just in commerce and in their treatment of the aboriginal people of the planet. Therefore, all the instruments that have been created under the Roman Curia to cause injury to man shall be exposed for what they are and shall have no longer the power that they've had over humanity. For not only are the nations of the earth turning against it, the divine laws of the universe has declared it null and void, dead. It will manifest itself exponentially as we speak and in the next coming months. And those who hold on to it, going down with it. Don't take my word for it. Smell the air. Pay attention to every detail. Whatever they tell you in the news, don't take anything that they tell you in the news. Pay attention to what you feel in your gut and what you're going to see. And for those who don't believe what I just said, start watching the shelves at your major stores like Walmart, Kmart, Sears, and all the rest of them as they begin to curl up and close down. At Philadelphia area, there was a tanker, as an example of many that have been and will be. And understand that they offload for the refiners for gasoline, etc., kerosene, and your other petrol products. The tanker sat since November and just left 2 weeks ago. They offloaded like a dripping faucet instead of letting it flow. 650,000 gallons, and a few more ships come right behind them after that ship left, following the same pattern. Now, if you think that these corporations are going to still keep operating with drip, 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 return of oil, offloading, where a ship sits in the harbor for over 2 months, just offloading, I suggest not to hold your breath. But I'm suggesting for you to pay attention to what's going on, because the nations of the earth are banding together to get rid of the dark priesthood, who is a blight on the planet. And so it is in our interest to stop pontificating and start paying attention to the details, because what they were warned was coming on the planet is already here. And for those who doubt what I just said, read the closing of the Old Testament, the book of Malachi, and then pay attention to the details of your experience. Forget what they tell you on Wall Street, because that's not going to last too much longer either. Also want to share with you just a little bit of Carolus Linnaeus on Systema Naturae, facsimile, and we're going back to 1735. And it's only to present to you that many of the political operations that take place today that has caused these divisions amongst humanity have life that's actually decades and hundreds of years. And this is one of the reasons why persons who call themselves the elite belong to secret societies so they can manipulate humanity and maintain their less than honorable agendas while the masses are not aware that most of the things that they claim in the name of love and God and Jesusness, they don't believe it themselves. But what it does with the secret societies, it allows them to maintain the Kabbalistic truths and the Gnostic truths for their selfish selves, and they create dogma systems which are called sects or denominations, which create schismata, which is a term they use in their military operations, keeping people divided. And then they suck on the injuries that they create against and upon humanity. Then hide behind the mystery devil did it to them when it's actually the priesthood themselves. So when you see a magistrate sitting on a bench imitating the ancient temples of Egypt, he's really a magi, a dark priest, magistrate, magi, magistrate, magi. From the dark priesthood. That's why there's no justice. Jesus means justice. They have no intention to issue justice. They only justify their, how would you say, forced contract enforcers that they send out on the street who enforce contracts on people for the insurance companies that they have stock in and murder people on the street who don't buy insurance from their partners who give them kickbacks, whether it's car insurance, so-called life insurance, and every insurance that they have under the Roman Curia is designed to rob the people and to kill nations. United States Corporation Company, being a member of the Roman Curia, is not designed to uplift people. It's designed like a spider who catches its prey in the web, sucks its essence like a vampire, then drops the carcass at the feet of the web. Everything they touch will turn to a persimmon, dried, decrepit, thoroughly exploited, and essentially ready for the grave. The problem that we have in North America is that the middle class, who has been the beneficiary for so many generations of social engineering management of what they call the Job, J-O-B, with a long O, Job, to extract all the resources from the Aboriginal indigenous people, now find that their Job that has become short O, job, now that the phoenix bird is eating them too. This is one of the reasons why many are denouncing their U.S. citizenship and going to other countries, nation states, and nationalizing. The problem that they have is many of the nations are rejecting any accounts by them, knowing that the fiat that they bring brings the poison of the cabal. And so they're closing all so-called American accounts, and then they're reporting back to the cabal order of the Inquisition, styled as the IRS, under House Joint Resolution 2847, and they're going to steal that too. It's unfortunate, but it's people are going to discover it's in all of our interests to be fair and to be just to each other. And like Prophet Noble Ali said years ago, he said, the time is going to come, children, that you're going to be walking down the street and see a $20 bill on the street, on the sidewalk, and you won't even waste your time bending over to pick it up. The time is now. And it doesn't mean that you can't transfer any energy for that bookkeeping instrument, but understand it's not money, it's a debt note under the cabal of the Inquisition operations under the Doctrine of Discovery, and it has reached the apex or apex level to now that it is toxifying even the carrier of that. So we're those who were targeted for the theft, meaning that they got no more blood in that turnip. And now they're going to devour the middle class. So what you have going on the last, say, 25 years, and what's going to accelerate greatly from the point that I'm speaking in these next coming months, you're going to see some acceleration that you never believed could ever happen. You're going to see some of these middle class people telling you some knowledge about the real history, law, government, commercial processes that you never imagined ever took place. However, I will remind them, you don't tell on the Don when you've been the beneficiary. However, that's still what's going to take place. So they're going to be forced to tell the truth. I suggest that everyone listen, take notes, etc., but take it with a grain of salt, because what is really happening now on the planet is that the heirs to the estate must be identified, because there is no movement of monies. The issue is resources and estate, and there is no creditor to the estate except the heirs. And the heirs must be identified, and therefore I hold out my hand all the day long to a hard-hearted and rebellious people who are not called by my name. When they repent from their sinful ways, I will hear from heaven and heal their land. That's their estate. And those who claim the estate and are not heirs to the estate will never be held as creditor. And every instrument that's created by them will shrivel up and will be toxin in the hand of whoever carries it, whoever holds it, whoever bargains with it, whoever even wishes to bargain with it. The encouragement will be justice, for there will be no peace on the planet until justice, and Jesus means justice. So mote it be. Anyway, you all, I think maybe in about 5 minutes or so, we'll take a break in about 5 minutes, and I'll talk a little bit more about this subject matters, then trusting that we have some people who will contribute, because keep this in mind, these issues are the issues of the entire human family on the planet, and those who don't wish to address it, got no problem with it, because truth and the rule of law, reciprocity, does not recognize personal station. And we don't have to address it. I tell you one thing, it will address us, and it is addressing us. We can ignore it. It won't ignore us. It kind of has me thinking, because we had a lot of planes. I'm out here with Grand Sheik's Nika and Grand Sheik Nature Eel out in Asbury Park, New Jersey territory. And we had a lot of plans to do some things today. But I think the White Dragon family had other ideas as a countermeasure to the harm that they've been doing to everybody else. And that's why we got this snow on the East Coast, and it's going to continue off and on and to destabilize the economy. So I'm telling you what's already happening. But it's going to be the West Coast, too. And the cold stream coming down from Canaan land will go deeper south, so that the fruits aren't going to be they might be crispy, but they won't be snappy. And so it's up to us, according to divine law, to enforce the grand covenant called the American Constitution. Choose not to, and the reward is ours. As you look for those, yes, because it is in relationship to the human constitution, Because when you look at the unanimous Declaration of Independence, understand you weren't talking or looking at the religious guys. They were deists. And they were dealing with divine law relative to nature's laws and nature's God. It does not recognize person or station or club or belief or so-called fake religion that anybody claims, or some green people or purple people or orange people, and all the code systems set up by the Kabbalists to divide humanity and to create their servitude system under their 14th Amendment Kabbal crud that's caused injury. Anyway, they can mess with us. See if they can mess with Mother Nature.